Megaman X. It's no secret that I consider this to be the best in the entire Mega Man series. By adding more gameplay elements to the existing classic series engine, that edgy atmosphere, and having the honor of controlling two of the most iconic characters in video game history. 3 years past, I've done a complete marathon of the Mega Man X series as a whole, showing my appreciation for most of them, and hatred for one of them. As fun as I have with the series in general, that doesn't mean everything is perfect. Back when Death Battle was still called Screw Attack, they used to broadcast their top 10 shows, and among those episodes are the top 10 best and worst classic Mega Man Robot Masters, and we all know who number 1 best is. So I'm thinking, maybe I can also do the same thing for the Mavericks of Mega Man X, by doing a top 20 countdown of them. Why top 20? Why keep things on top 10 when you can double down? I am Psyche X, and welcome to my countdown of the top 20 worst Mega Man X Mavericks. Right here on my countdown I call Top of the Game Chain. It's not just Screw Attack that gave me inspirations to do this countdown. In fact, 2 YouTube channels, Jay's Reviews, as well as The Quarter Guy, both hardcore Mega Man fans, also did countdowns for Mega Man X Mavericks as well. At least, I think Jay's Reviews did. I know The Quarter Guy did, but whether or not the other one was Jay's Reviews, I'm not too sure. But if so, it's also from him that I also got inspirations to do this. Anyway, here's how today's countdown will run. 1. Just like Screw Attack, each entry will be based on stage design, weapon usage, the character appeal, or any combinations of all of the above. 2. I will also include footages from the Zero Project hack of Mega Man X3, whenever applicable, just to see how difficult Mavericks can be with both hunters. 3. Unlike Jay's Reviews or The Quarter Guy, I will also include Mavericks from Mega Man X Command Mission as well. The reason why is because in this game, which is an RPG as opposed to a side-scroller, while it is true that X cannot gain any special weapons from this game's Mavericks like he normally would in past games, the closest thing to a special weapon system is Axel's ability of DNA change. After all, Axel is now the 3rd protagonist of the X series since his debut, which would make a lot of sense. Just so we're clear, I do like and respect both Jay's Reviews and The Quarter Guy as well as their videos, and I can understand their reasons as to why they're excluding Command Mission for their countdowns. But for me personally, just like trying to get all the achievements on a typical Xbox 360 or PlayStation 4 game, I'm also trying to be a completionist and I really don't want to leave Command Mission out. Sure, we all know that Command Mission is an RPG as opposed to being a typical platformer like all other games of the X series, but the thing is it still has Mega Man X in the title, so I really don't want to leave Command Mission out. Which brings me to my next rule. 4. By including Command Mission in this countdown, only Mavericks that give away DNA changes for Axel are the only ones that will be accounted for in this list. Before we begin, I then figured out that the top 15 Mavericks video that Jay's Reviews did was actually done by IKG Productions, and that Jay was just collaborating with IKG. To be fair, and just to also be clear, I've seen the video and I enjoyed it, and while I understand their opinions as well as respect their stipulations, I just think that having to leave Zero out of it does sound rather unfair. Sure, he's not playable in the first 2 games and has limited playability in X3, but he's still X's best friend and a second major protagonist to the series, and that goes double for Axel now that he's the 3rd protagonist. To reiterate again, Mega Man X Command Mission is an RPG that deviates itself from what the series is mostly about, platforming and side-scrolling, but I want to feel more complete as the game does have some interesting Mavericks as well. I should also point out that this is my own list with personal opinions, so don't take it too seriously. So, who's the first victim? Let's start this mission out, shall we?
Snipe Anteater.
Of course, we would start off with someone from Megaman X7, my most hated entry in the series, and kicking off the list is Snipe Anteater. The first thing about him that sucked is how cyberspace is designed. The gimmick in Act 1 of cyberspace in Megaman X4 is that you're in a speedrun simulator, and your goal is to try to get rank S in order to score some secrets in the game, and while those golden objects can be nuisances, both acts are very tolerable. As far as cyberspace in X7 goes, it's an eyesore as the stage is too bright. But what's worse would be the two gimmicks in the stage. The first being that when you jump inside a transport ring, you'll also be traversing the stage upside down with your controls partially messed up. Also, if you're planning on rescuing the helpless citizens, some areas will require you to have Axel steal DNA from these samurai, as they're the only ones that can cross through these special barriers, and this transformation is so slow. Even jumping looks pathetic. But then comes the fight against the Maverick himself. He can go around a cylindrical arena, but you can't. Many times he can anticipate your movements, it takes pleasure on firing homing missiles at your face, and his army ants can detonate even when you're not near one at all, and they hurt harshly. Oh wait, there's also his stupid laser drones that you can't destroy, and they suck too. So much so that when I was recording footage for the review, I got a game over from him. But at least the game is lenient enough to let me restart the match instead of going through the whole stage all over again. The only good thing from Snipe Anteater will be the weapons that you get from him. The Sniper Missile for X and Axel, and Heatonix for Zero. Though I use Heatonix more as it doesn't consume ammo and I can defeat some goons from a distance. It's better to be well stocked and hopefully get 2 E-tanks before attempting this boss fight, or else you'll be in hours of pure frustration. But hey, we're just getting started here. Yeah, I had to make a fictional intro screen for Command Mission's Mavericks, as they're not introduced traditionally like in any other Megaman X game. Anyway, the first Command Mission to make the list is Gentro. One of the complaints I have with Command Mission is how grind heavy the game is, meaning that unlike Square Enix RPGs from Capcom would often follow the format of having total experience points split among the total number of party members. So much so that I had to go back in past areas before Chapter 5 as I really wanted to be sure that my team is well prepared. The area of Chapter 5 has 2 different gimmicks. The first part has you playing Metal Gear but with a twist. You have to be sure that you don't make any sudden movements while these enemies are moving. Hiding in a good spot doesn't mean anything, just having that 1 pixel of movement while the enemies are moving is enough to trigger a fight. Thankfully, after that section, you got Axel in the team, already with DNA from past chapters, and it's from that point of the game that you'll need him a lot in this chapter. Mainly because the next gimmick is turning switches on these conveyor belts, which isn't too bad, although some enemies on the field you can't avoid them at all, and some of the enemies are more resilient this time around, especially these piranhas that can absorb fire. The design on Gentro looks good, not only having that gentleman-like appearance, especially the staff he uses in combat, but he also has that cocky persona as if he claims to be untouchable. That's when things become challenging. You want to make sure that X and Axel are kept healthy in this match because Gentro will mostly stay in the air and only shots from X and Axel can stun him to the ground, but you gotta hurry to damage him before his turn comes and he recovers. Also, you gotta be sure that you're equipped with water-based attacks, and this is the only boss fight in the game where X's crossfire armor is useless because Gentro can absorb fire, prolonging the match even further, and it doesn't help that his machine, the Debor, can mass-produce more of his goons to waste more of your time and resources. Once he goes down, you think that's the end of it, right? Well, surprise, because now you have to defeat 4 groups of Gentro's goons, and you have likely exhausted all of your hyper modes, leaving just your action triggers and whatever E-tanks you have left and hope for the best. Axel's DNA change from Gentro, the Flames of Gehenna, is a strong fire-based technique that damages all enemies during a battle. All the bosses in Command Mission really do heavy damage no matter what you do, and that's a fact, but this fight wouldn't be so bad if the match had the option to temporarily disable his machine, so that you'll have full reign for a few turns. But he's far from being an irritating boss in Command Mission, as there will be more later in this countdown. Even though Megaman X5 have some things that are a step down from X4, it's still a fun game to play, as it also has some good challenges, though this game would often have some difficulty spikes that come out of nowhere. Even some of the game's Mavericks are challenging to fight, except for one. The first X5 Maverick to make the list, and the one most people would select, is Grizzly Slash, aka Crescent Grizzly. His stage is very similar to that of Slash Beastleo from X4, only you're jumping from one different weapon convoys to the next. Could have been better, but the stage is too short. I will agree with the Quarter Guy, as his artwork does make him menacing in hindsight, but in my opinion, his sprite design is really not that bad. However, his giant physique doesn't match his so-called ferocity in battle, or lack thereof. There are open gaps in the match where you can dodge his attacks, and he moon jumps a lot, coupled with his physique makes it easier to connect your attacks. He will try to come from the ceiling and drill straight through the ground, but he's so slow at doing so, you'll be quick enough to dodge it. The weapons you get from him are good to use though, as you have the C-Shot for X, while Zero gets both the Crescent Spin Slash as well as a double jump. Yup, a 2-for-1 deal. Believe you me, this isn't the only big guy with wasted potential, as there are other ginormous Mavericks much worse than him. Megaman X6, the one game in the X series that nobody had expected, and the randomness of difficulty spike is through the frickin' roof, even more so than X5. Most, but not all Mavericks in the game have stages that are harder to navigate than fighting the Mavericks themselves, with the exception of one, but we'll get to it later. Granted, I still enjoyed the game for what it is, despite its shortcomings. It tried to emulate the stage effects after defeating a boss from X1, but in this game, it takes entering and exiting a stage to alter another, and that's where the random spike comes in, especially for the stage of Metal Shark Player. Metal Shark Player's stage is a trash compactor and is the only stage with a ride armor, which you can use to stop the compact from crushing you as long as you're mounted in one. However, once you're on foot, you better make sure that you have a responsive controller and crouch in time, especially on tight sections like these, because the moment you get hurt, or if you let go of the crouch button, just that one pixel of your body is enough to register an instant death. That's right, even the Nightmare Pressure sub-boss while also on moving conveyor belt. Also, there's this one capsule that's very far for you to jump, so you better hope you remember which Reploid you rescued carries a specific upgrade part, and know which stage to enter in order to trigger some things in Shark Stage. Metal Shark Player is not too difficult. He'll be swimming around the junk pile, throw anchors at you, perform a diving headbutt because Hammerhead Shark, and when in low HP, he'll summon clones of past Mavericks to attack you like Sting Chameleon. Unfortunately, the weapons you receive after the match aren't that useful. X fires up to 2 metal anchors at a time, and they just keep on bouncing until they explode, while for Zero, he gets a downward thrust called Rakukojin, which summons a weaker metal anchor upon impact, it takes up weapon energy when performing the move, and you'll only use that move to destroy the Nightmare Iron blocks, assuming if you encountered one somehow. Overall, Metal Shark Player is a decent enough Maverick, but his weapon is not good, and I hate his stage so much that I find it symbolic that a trash compactor would be where his fate lies. As classic as X1 is, not every Maverick gets a praise from me, and dare I say right now, this is the only Maverick from the first game in this whole list, and it's Flame Mammoth at number 16. The Abandoned Factory is a nice stage with a good challenge, with enemies being mass-produced and out for blood the moment you make eye contact, great items to collect, assuming you have the head parts and defeated Chill Penguin prior, and finally, the music of the stage is one of my favorites from the game. The match against Flame Mammoth, by contrast, is anything but good. Another example of a big Maverick whose size doesn't make him that threatening. You're fighting inside a large conveyor belt room that occasionally changes direction, which doesn't really mean anything as the speed of the belt is so slow, and by that point, you already have the leg parts from Chill Penguin prior. Flame Mammoth's attacks will miss for the most part as it is a wide arena, and you can dash out of the way whenever he jumps. Perhaps the only few advantages he's got is when he stuns you with an earthquake when you mistime a jump, he'll randomly jump longer distances, and with the wideness of the arena, use off-screening to his advantage as any shot you fire will not affect him unless he's on screen, but be warned that he can still fight back even when off-screen. His weapon, the Fire Wave, could have been better. To put it simply, it's a short-range flamethrower but with nice attack power. Overall, Flame Mammoth could have had better potential, but his design is less than stellar. His attacks can be easily read after a few tries, and when you defeat him, I'm sure his remains will have likely ended up in a museum somewhere in the Hunter's world. In just about every Mega Man game, there's always at least one boss that's hardly a huge threat, either by attacks, the boss's looks, or a combination of both, one of which is Crystal Snail from X2. His cavern stage is nicely designed, the shiny effects are well done, does have some good secrets to catch, assuming if you take advantage of the right armor in the stage, and the stage music is very soothing. Crystal Snail, on the other hand, his design is not that good, but to its credit, at least his eyes are not on the antennae, where it would normally be from actual snails, or else it would have been creepy. As mentioned by the Quarter Guys video, it takes about 10 seconds for him to descend to the ground and start the match, though I assume this whole sequence was just a way to show off the power of Mode 7, and it's irritating to see this sequence again should you get killed. It can be sometimes easy or tricky to dodge his projectiles, as well as anticipate where he will rush by with his spinning shell attack. But his cheapness comes from him hiding in his shell and deflect your attacks as he's quick to anticipate your shots somehow. For Snail. Another cheap tactic is his ability to slow down time while Snail himself can move just fine. Again, for Snail, as if he is a stand user from JoJo, and I'm sure some JoJo fans would know what stand has that similar ability. His weapon is not all useful. The Crystal Hunter is similar to Burstman's Danger Wrap from Mega Man 7, only non-lethal and only useful if you need platforms to reach some higher areas, while its charged version is slowing down time. But not on your favor, as it also affects you as well, which kind of feels like a JoJo stand turning against you. Also, it's advisable to get the Magnet Mine from Magna Centipede first, and by depleting his last HP, he has gone from Crystal Snail to Boiled Escargot. The only time I ever had fun with X3 is with the Zero Project hack, as it feels more complete and that the controls are much better handled. But I'll admit that X3 does have some fun Maverick matches and some can be challenging. And then we have Neon Tiger. The few good things about Neon Tiger will be his design, as he's ferocious as a tiger should be, especially with his Wolverine claws, and show how savage he is in the anime cutscenes. Sadly, that same ferocity is not shown in his boss fight. While he can block your attacks, his strategy is mostly him firing projectiles at you, which are very easy to dodge, even when he does so while clinging to a wall. Not to mention, he only uses his claws at low HP, and even then you can get away easily. While the forest is an appropriate stage for Neon Tiger, the overall atmosphere is bland at best, especially the stage music. It doesn't feel so lively as any other wilderness stages in other games in the series. The only few things from this stage that are notable will be the dragonflies that you can ride on, especially that one section that has a heart tank, or these punks that can turn a smooth surface into a spike trap, and need I remind you that spikes are instant death, especially small ones like that. While the firing speed of the Ray Splasher is fast, sadly its strength is less to be desired. The fact that Neon Tiger sticks to walls with his claws at the ready, you'd think he'd be agile and strong simultaneously, but no. Vega from Street Fighter and Wolverine? Neon Tiger is not either one. While I do find fighting Mach Gentro irritating, especially with his respawning goons, Dr. Psyche is a little more problematic. The area is very straightforward with two notable gimmicks, with the first being these panels that you can dash over them because touching one on foot will cause a fight to break out, which in itself is not bad as it's worth getting some experience points, and these panels do reactivate after a few seconds. The second gimmick is right after Marino is recruited, where you're in this special maze, which is also a gauntlet that determines which enemies you'll face until you reach the path to Dr. Psyche. The maze is probably the only positive thing I could say about Goldeel's lab, as it's very useful when you want to grind for experience points, especially during Chapter 5 once you got Axel in the team. Though it's advisable to consult a guide as you don't want to face goons that are above your level just yet. Dr. Psyche really has that sneaky, conniving mad scientist personality down, and its overall design goes very well with it. You could say he's like an evil version of the Fugitoid from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Your match against him is mostly just Psyche doing some stupid dance in order to summon flying needles to assist him in battle. However, this battle is a little weird in that while the needles can fire bullets to hurt you, Psyche would also launch them onto your team, and when he does, it's random on whether you've been buffed or debuffed. Given his physique, as well as his stupid dance, you shouldn't even waste hyper modes on him as he's really pathetic to fight. Oh, but lo and behold, Psyche decides to rip off Pokemon and evolve himself into Mad Nautilus, and this is where things start to suck for the player. I find the design of Mad Nautilus to be so strange. I mean, it's one thing to give him a protective shell, but having a horn sticking out? That's just overdoing it. I've stated that Dr. Psyche is problematic than Mach Gentra, and that holds true for this match because one thing you have to keep an eye on is his shell. There's no more than one target during the match, and what sucks is that even if you attack the shell, you'll be counterattacked and his tentacle lasers really hurt. The whole fight is mostly a waiting and defending game until Psyche performs a move called Mad Ecstasy. Then, and only then, you can attack with everything you got, but you need to act fast because the bosses in the game are very quick to have the next turn, and his shell will be active again. Lather, rinse, repeat until you win. Just remember to shut off your hyper forms when he's protected again. Why we couldn't also target his exposed head is a design choice I'll never understand, but anyway, Axel's DNA change from Psyche, Mad Cocktail, is not useful at all, as it only inflicts enemies with status change and debuffs. That's it. All your stored weapon energy down the drain. The only time I'm okay with debuffs in RPGs is when I inflict them while also damaging them, which is what the Persona series did right. Of course, at the end of the match, Cinnamon joins the team, but I'm sure that anybody who's played the game hardly uses her, and her real use is just producing force medals. Cheap tactics and a useless DNA change? Mad Nautilus deserves to be on this list as he sucks big time, and seeing him get blown up is enough to satisfy me.
The doctor is in! Let's do this! The doctor is out!
And here we have another big guy whose potential is wasted. It's Rainy Turtloid from X6, and I will say that his stage is a real pain to traverse through. The first part of the stage is alright, but then comes the worst parts of the stage. The acid rain, which slowly drains your HP. The idea is to destroy the generator in that particular area, but before you do so, you have to find this orange power cores that's protecting the generator. Once the shield is down, then you can destroy it. What sucks is that there will be enemies guarding the cores, and they're the kind that can block your attacks. Not to mention, the cores themselves can do touch damage, and sometimes the acid rain is too intense that the cores can sometimes blend with the rain. But wait, there's also that moving platform section where you have to dash carefully while the acid rain is occurring, bearing in mind that the acid rain can still kill you slowly. Rainy Turtloid does have a good art design and looks like he can be a great challenge. In-game, however, he's not, especially if the character you're using is Zero. The only thing he does is fire missiles from his back, retract to his shell and start spinning with spikes, and will try to force you off the walls by ramming into them, as well as follow your position whether on ground or air. His critical attack is still his shell attack, while also firing water orbs at you. He doesn't really put up much of a fight, and any hunter can take him down, but it's more fun with Zero as he's quick to destroy his defense jewels, and you can go to town with his Z-Buster as it's very effective close range. As for the weapon you get, I think Zero's Ensuizan is useful as he can take out huge crowds gunning for him, and is the weakness of Metal Shark Player, as well as one sub-boss that we'll get to see later in the video. Cowabunga? Cow a freaking piece of scrap metal if you ask me. You saw that, right? The moment you start the stage of Squid Adler, aka Volt Kraken, you're greeted with a pitfall while speeding through with a hover bike. The moment the word ready flashes, you better react fast on that jump button. Even with fast reaction, that doesn't change the fact that you're speeding through a stage with so many gaps and have more ways for the stage to flatten you. In addition, if you want to get that one armor part for X, you have to collect all of the blue orbs scattered during the bike section, and I'm very sure that for first time players, you'll lose more lives in that section more so than the rest of the stage. When on foot, many of the enemies you'll face are defensive types and will block your attacks until they decide to make their move, and the only way to move forward with the stage is to attack these switches to open the doors. Not only are they slow to move, but there's also more than one switch to attack, and some of them there's a hazard that will stall you for time. The only redeeming factors of this stage will be the stage music, as it gives an adrenaline rush despite only lasting in the bike section for a short time, and the numerous Rapplers that you can rescue, because not only do they restore HP, but also give you lives to make up for the amount of lives you lost in that bike section. The design of Squid Adler does the job of telling you that he doesn't mess around, and surely enough, he doesn't. Or rather, his aggression only shows up after losing 1/3 of his HP, and you'll find yourself jumping around, making sure you don't get shocked, and avoid some obstacles that he sometimes throws in. The only time he's a pushover is when I go through the stage as Zero, but only after I defeated Duff McWhalen prior. Between the two hunters, Zero has the better weapon, as his Denshin Blade is an anti-air move that, unlike Ryu Engine from X4, can be cancelled out to a different move, while X's Tri-Thunder is Electman's Thunder Beam, only weaker. While the second part of the stage is not too bad, albeit slow, the bike section sure was handled poorly. I mean, I don't mind occasionally having high-speed sections, but having so many split-second reactions like this doesn't make the stage fun. And there will be times that input lag can happen even if you press jump. This stage could have been redesigned before releasing the game. If you think fighting Goro or his Shokan tribe in Mortal Kombat is intimidating, especially with their 4 arms, Incentus will give you a run for your money. This guy's motif is that of a Sphinx, but with 6 arms. The developers must be thinking, hey, having 4 arms is scary, why not add another pair of arms and give him cheap moves to take off players? That's exactly what they did with Incentus. I hate fighting this guy all because of these facts. He performs elemental change each turn, and he'll immediately follow up with a mid-tier elemental attack that even some of the equipment you're using for some elements don't help. Because of this, you'll spend so much of your time using up a turn after healing up your character, not giving you any chance to retaliate, and there will be times that Incentus' turn will come up faster than your team, and he'll eventually unleash high-tier attacks that even full HP won't matter much. Your best bet is to ensure Axel has the energy to perform the necessary DNA change to attack him, but it's also risky seeing as how the common trope with speed-type characters is that they have low defense, and if you revive him upon KO, it'll be a while before Axel can have his turn, and hopefully he's not being targeted. As for the mine itself, it provides some good enemies to grind for both experience and cash. Even though it's an RPG, it wouldn't be a Megaman game without the series' common enemy types, the Metals, but the one you'll want the most are the rare silver and gold ones, but the downside with them is that if you damage them more than once, you'll lose out on a big payoff, as each damage they take, you'll get less cash for them after the fight. The elemental globs, I find them intolerable, at least in the US version. It wasn't until I did a research that if you attack that glob with the same element, not only will you power them up, but you'll also raise the experience given to you after the match. What's intolerable about it is that in the US version, the more you do so, it's like they know you're onto them of the idea and they'll eventually escape, killing your chances of getting experience points, thereby wasting your time. But in the Japanese version, they don't escape at all, and you can exploit that until you feel like you've done enough. You know how in some games that if you somehow cheat, the developers will program the game and simply fight back without warning? That's how it feels like in the US version, and it would have benefited me considering the game's experience system. Oh, and you gotta deal with Shadow first before Incentus. The DNA change from Incentus is the Asura Knuckle, a decent non-elemental attack that targets multiple enemies. Think of it as launching multiple bat slaps on enemies. As with any other Mega Man game, you'll have a rematch with the defeated Maverick, though by that point, it is you who will get the last word after your first match with him. When it comes to fire-type Mavericks, they usually have nice level designs. Some have interesting gimmicks that test your platforming skills, and some offer good boss matches. Unfortunately, Blaze Heatonix doesn't have either one. For starters, once you drop down the cliff, you'll be greeted by one of 6 nightmare snakes. Yes, 6 of them. Granted, you'll only fight 5 of them depending on the route you take, and these guys are the worst sub-bosses in Megaman X history. Not only are their snakes touch damage high, they also fire projectiles out of the 4 green cores that you need to destroy, and their movement patterns differ depending on the area you encounter them at, with the worst one being inside rising purple magma, where it is also randomly ascending and descending. Also, if you want to save the Reploids, you gotta be quick on dodging the flames because they hurt hard, and get rid of the nightmares because there will be times that they will ignore you and infect the Reploids instead. The artwork of Blaze Heatonix makes him look fierce as a phoenix should, but in-game, he's a real doormat. He'll always start the match by summoning magma stream from below, and you can just keep attacking him before he finishes the summoning. From there, he'll try to follow you from wherever you're being positioned, but even you are quick enough to get away as he ascends from the magma. Perhaps the only time he's threatening is when he summons magma stream from above, preventing you from having higher ground, as well as charging really fast when at low HP, but overall a pathetic boss match. The only good things from Blaze Heatonix would be the stage music, which is very rockin', and the weapons you get from him. The Magma Blade for X, which allows him to throw fireballs, and Shoenzan for Zero, which while not as great as the Ryu engine, it still gets the job done as an anti-air move. Bottom line, this stage is literally dumpster fire, and Jean Grey is better at being a Phoenix than Blaze Heatonix will be. Also, Blaze Heatonix? He should change his name to Fried Chicken upon death. To quote the Quarter Guy, the design of Wire Sponge is unappealing and misleading. Just to be clear, whenever I see the word sponge in his name, I don't immediately think about the household cleaning item. I thought that by sponge, it would be the multicellular organisms that thrive underwater. Instead, he's based off from a loofah, or some people refer to it as an Egyptian cucumber. Even with that knowledge, it doesn't change the fact that his design is something you just can't take seriously. His stage is very generic, with the only notable gimmick, if you can call it one, would be the orbs that can change the weather when you destroy one. Sure, when it rains it pushes you back, which is no problem as you do have the ground dash from the start. Otherwise, it does nothing to make the stage more interesting. As for your match against him, you can easily anticipate his movements when he'll start throwing his hook arm towards you, and when he starts hanging onto a ceiling, he's just setting himself open for you to attack him. The only real threat is when he summons lightning at low HP, which does hurt if he's in a position you don't want him in, but the farther he is, the lightning will always miss as long as you're far away yourself. I don't find myself using his weapon, the strike chain, that much, except for a few instances when just simply air dashing in an attempt to reach a secret item wasn't enough. In the end, his design and attacks are enough to warrant him a pathetic maverick in this countdown. Honestly, I wouldn't even think about going after him, especially when the rewards you get aren't that interesting, but if you so desired, for bragging rights, I would advise to keep on grinding through Redips and to revive Mavericks again until you're in a good enough level, because Ninetales will break you in two. When you defeat the game for the first time, you're rewarded with the Central Key, which you can unlock this one door in Giga City's Central Tower and face the hardest bosses in Command Mission. Before you can even reach Ninetales, you have to go through each of his allies. Each have a different number of tails, and the stipulations of each clan member differs, as some of them will share traits with the other defeated Mavericks. Even with the ultimate armor and absolute zero hyper modes, these clan members will do whatever it takes to ensure that you don't see their leader, and because you don't have Spider in your team, your best bet is to power up Axel and prolong his hyper mode since he's invincible while in that state. The only saving grace is that after the match, you don't need to start a fight with the next one right away, and instead just retreat back to mission control to heal up and head back over there for the next match. However, going back and forth between mission control and the central tower is very tedious and slow that I wish there were save points after each clan member battle so that I could just warp my way back to mission control a lot faster. Sure, I still have to go back to central tower on foot, but by warping back via save point, I could at least save some seconds that way. The design on Ninetales looks awesome, befitting for a hidden boss, but you won't like him immediately as soon as the match starts because as shown here, he's capable of taking out a member in just 2 hits, and his other move, which his men also share, the Annihilator Hadouken, nearly killed off both X and Zero, and if I hadn't activated Axel's hyper mode in the nick of time, 1 hit from it would have done him in. Ninetales will still have the speed to have the first turn when the match starts, so you better keep building up speed for hours on end before taking on this guy. I've stated that I wouldn't even think about going after him, because even though he's the strongest hidden boss, you would expect for him to give you even greater rewards, but sadly you don't. The DNA change from Ninetales is the 9 Fragments, a 9-hit non-elemental attack on a single enemy, which is pointless when all other DNA abilities, except for Wild Django and Mad Nautilus, are all attacks that target multiple enemies. If anything, they could have just given Axel the Annihilator Hadouken as the DNA change from Ninetales, after what they did to my team when I first fought him. The name says it all for crying out loud. Also, the Ancient Gun for Axel is effective against bosses, but there's not much bosses left to fight, other than rematches with Redeps and the other Mavericks, and even then, you might have already got the other unlockables prior, it's not even worth it. And as I mentioned before in my review, I still wish for the Ancient Gun to be in the form of the Cult Single Action Army, so that Axel can go Revolver Ocelot on anybody. There's no denying that the Ride Chaser section in Squid Adler sucks, but the Ride Chaser section from Ride Borsky in X7 is way worse. His stage is not very engaging. Your only objective is to pick up the bombs that are scattered on the circuit before the time's up. It would be simple enough if it wasn't for how loose the controls are for the Ride Chaser. If you somehow miss a bomb, you'll have to loop through the whole circuit again because the stage doesn't allow you to turn around. Same thing goes for the Reploids on the field. If you miss one, you gotta go around the circuit again and hope to heaven that no enemy touches a Reploid, or else they'll buy the farm early with a possible power-up along with them. As for the match against Ride Borsky, it's very distasteful, because you're fighting him in an overhead view, you'll find yourself jumping around so much to avoid any of his attacks, and just when you think it couldn't get any worse, he's not alone as he has his grenade-throwing goons backing him up. I should also mention that the arena floor is graded and you don't have a drop shadow when you jump, making it very easy for you to mistime your jump when trying to avoid attacks. His design, let's just say, it's not very good. Other Robot Masters from classic Mega Man with the ability to transform into vehicles have done better, but Ride Borsky, in both forms, is more or less a Transformers reject that not even Megatron would ever let him join the Decepticons. Heck, the Maximals in Beast Wars are better Transformers than Ride Borsky. When you fight him, his personality is irritating. Granted, in reality, Warthogs usually have a fiery temper, threatened or not, but Borsky is just making a fool of himself, and he over-squeals so much that I just want him to shut up. You may not see it, but I'm shuddering here a little bit. The weapons you get from him are straight up useless. You get the moving wheel for the long-range hunters and Zankuren for Zero, both of which are supposed to be the weakness of Snipe Anteater, and it's not very effective. Ride Borsky? I've got a better name for him. Fried Pork Chops. And I'm thinking about having one right about now. I still stand by my word that Megaman X8 is still my second favorite Megaman X game, but even then it's far from perfect. However, one Maverick stands above the rest whose stage is more threatening than himself, and Optic Soundflower is it. His stage is mostly a series of simulators where you either get a high score when destroying enemies, or defeat the enemies as fast as you can, and whenever you get a high score, the next test gets harder. Basically cyberspace, only not much variety, but it's better than the eyesore from X7. The only parts of the stage I don't like will be the intermission areas, as some of them would have bottomless pits and testing your dashing skills, and then there's this area with the spikes, and the hit detection from them is sometimes screwy, so you better be sure that you bought a prickle barrier before coming here. If you're the completionist type, chances are you'll most likely miss out on one rare medal, but you won't know that unless you consult a guide, because for one rare medal, you need to meet the quota in all 8 simulations, while the other, you need to beat the quota of at least 5 to 7 simulations. If you're planning on getting a high rank on all simulations, not only should you do it fast, which is easier said than done because of too much platforming and enemies tend to have higher HP, but you also gotta make sure that you don't die, because you'll go down a rank if you do. Even your rank will go down if you get killed in intermission areas, be it pitfalls or spikes, and all of your hard work was wasted. As for Optic Sunflower, he's not too threatening. That's usually the problem with vegetation-based Mavericks, with the only 2 that could ever put up a fight would be Split Mushroom from X4 and Axel the Red, aka Spike Rose Red from X5. He'll attack you with lasers that don't go through platforms, he'll make clones of himself, for what good that'll do him, he'll fire an Orbital Flight to capture a Hunter, which is nothing Tag Assist won't fix, and his rage move, Earth Crush, can be easily anticipated. Out of all the weapons you get from Sunflower, Axel's Ray Gun is more useful than the other Hunters because their weapons are often guaranteed to miss. On a side note, there's a nice Easter egg in this stage in which you get to fight Cutman from Megaman 1, 8-bit design, music and all. Either you have the command mission save file for the PS2 version of X8, or get the highest rank in all 8 simulators for the PC, Xbox One, PS4, and Switch versions of X8. If the developers wanted to make a vegetation-type Maverick that's threatening, they could have used a more dangerous flower than this. Earlier in the countdown, I said that Rainy Turtloid doesn't put up much of a fight, and I still stand by it, but this guy is cannon fodder. A complete joke. A joke that's not even funny. Before I talk about him, let's discuss his stage. The Central Museum is a complete mess. I get that the whole plot is the nightmare phenomenon causing corruption in the system, but this is going way overboard. You have to touch these totem poles to be teleported to a different part of the stage, and the area you show up in is completely random. No consistency whatsoever, and aside from the nightmares, you'll be bombarded with spawning debris that home in on you. If you're planning on rescuing all the Reploids and get all the secrets in the stage, good luck with that because of the areas being random generated, it's impossible to get everything in the museum in one go. Your rescue list would often come as incomplete, prompting you to go back over there many more times until you finally got them all. As for Ground Scaravich, seriously? A dung beetle. A dung beetle. What the heck were the developers thinking that a dung beetle will pose a serious threat? The only thing he does is rolling rocks around, rolling rock, and occasionally kicking onto you. He'll sometimes throw a straight projectile shot at you, but all of his attacks can be avoided as there are 4 bars placed in the arena to hang onto. He'll try to roll up a bigger rock, but no matter the size, they can't be destroyed as they don't have any properties of a shield unless you're playing in extreme mode, but even in that mode, his behavior is still the same. With a useless Maverick comes useless weapons. For X, he has the misleading Ground Rush, which you would think would be a shot with decent to fast speeds, but nope, it's very slow and only useful against Blaze Heatonix. For Zero, you get the Sensuizan, a useless downward slash that you can't cancel out of, and there's a high chance you'll fall into a bottomless pit if you ended up performing the move by accident. Scaravich, will he do the Fandango? Nope. Instead, I'll feel better seeing him roll himself to death in a waste disposal incineration unit. We're at the home stretch of the countdown. The Central Museum stage was bad enough, but Blizzard Wolfang stage will make you lose your cool. Quite literally. Snow or ice stages aren't too bad when done right, as shown here by Frost Walrus stage in X4. As one would expect, the whole stage is frozen and very slippery. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Ha ha ha. Unlike Frost Walrus stage, you can't stick to walls at all, meaning you're playing through the game in classic Mega Man 1 logic. Yeah, Iceman, anyone? But that's not all, as you have to take cover from an avalanche that's coming at you from the start of the stage. Isn't that fantastic? Then you have this section where you have to jump across bottomless pits while ice boulders are raining down from the ceiling. Need I remind you for the second time that you can't stick to walls? There are also some sections that contain secrets, but they can only be accessible if you entered and exited the magma area prior to entering this stage. But you wouldn't know that unless you consult a guide or somehow do some experimentations of your own, which is what I did before I even knew about the existence of GameFAQs. From there, you have these slippery slopes that you need to dash jump in a hurry or more boulders will magically spawn to give you more hard time. Oh yeah, one slope chose you with spikes and the other has spikes on the walls? That's good level design for you. Then you have this section where ice blocks deal big damage if they land on your head, and when they hit the floor, you'll have to utilize them as platforms, but once again, you can't do wall jumps, and if you're somehow trapped, you have no choice but to sacrifice a life and start again. Finally, you have this section where rows of ice blocks fall down, and you have to jump up the open gap. However, if you somehow get caught in the open gap as the ice forms upon landing, it'll count as you getting crushed and lose a life. As for Blizzard Wolfang, his artwork and sprite designs make him look like a worthy opponent. Most of what he does is fire ice orbs in an arc, run around to where you're positioned, and occasionally attack you from walls or the ceiling, and it's the only part in the stage where you can actually stick to walls. The weapons you get from him are not good enough though. Ice Burst allows X to fire a block of ice, which he can also use as a stepping stone, while Hyoroga for Zero allows him to dash up and temporarily cling to a ceiling while also firing icicles. These moves are supposed to be Rainy Turtloid's weakness, but only X has the edge due to the ceiling in Turtloid's arena being too high for Zero to reach. Wolfang is a worthy opponent to fight without being too cheap, but if you somehow defeated Blaze Heatonix prior, he goes down hard, and that's the best way I could sum up his stage overall. After so much lives this stage cost me, this stage deserves to go down in flames. I really mean it. And here's that one Maverick from Megaman X that will cause you to pull your hair out and rage quit because of how cheap this guy is. That annoying flea, Infinity Maginian. His stage is very straightforward and poses no challenge whatsoever. You'll spend the whole stage moving forward while also avoiding Illumina's attacks until you're stopped by a giant cable, which is very easy to destroy, especially if by chance you defeated Rainy Turtloid prior. Even Illumina's second phase is a cakewalk as well. Once Illumina's down, it's either you go inside the conveniently placed portal where it's slightly challenging as you have to utilize the bars to save the Reploids and fight the Zero Nightmare, Hymax or Dynamo, whichever you did first, or if you choose to ignore it, immediately you can start your match against Maginian. This boss match sucks very hard, and his design and the word Infinity alone are enough to tell you how irritating he is. He'll fire a straight laser that can either go up and down, depending on where the player is positioned. He'll fire projectiles left, right, and from the ceiling all at once, and whenever he gets hit, he gets knocked back easily, but not before creating clones as he does so. And what's even worse is that Maginian and his clones fire rounds of acid bubbles that follow you until you destroy them. Even if you know who the real one is, which is obvious since he's the only one moving, it still doesn't change the fact that he will cheat and isolate you easily. If and when you somehow defeat him, the rewards you get are very pleasant. X gets the Ray Arrow, which is a good laser attack, while Zero's Rekuha is a freaking screen nuke. I do find his theme song good, especially the intro part of the track being reminiscent of the song The Final Countdown by Europe. This is one of the most difficult bosses in Megaman X history, and he deserves to get the boot and be squashed after all the times he cheats in this match.
Hyonard.
Yep. Any Megaman X player that's watching this video definitely saw this one coming. Let's face it, Megaman X7 is the worst of the series, and it can't be stressed enough. The gimmicks are horrible, especially the whole 3D aspect, the worst debut for Axel, bad voice acting overall, stupid level designs, and this game has 8 Mavericks that are worth hating on. And on this episode of Top of the Game Chain, this not-so-laughing hyena takes the top spot. Remember when I said that I was shuddering off-screen? Well, this is it. If you think the magma area in X6 has the worst stage design for a Fire-type Maverick, Flame Hyonard is the absolute worst. You have these detonators that you can't destroy yourself, and they start ticking down the very second it shows up on screen, and it's much worse when there's one underneath a Reploid that you can rescue. This stage has lava and lots of it. While it's not too bad on Act 1, save for areas that have Reploids to rescue, and 1 to catch that one armor part for X, Act 2 is the worst as it's on a 3D setting. Enemies have the tendency to appear out of nowhere, while jumping on Act 2's environment is full of jank, and you have those stupid rotating wave machines that causes knockdown. Not knockback, knockdown. And there's always a chance that you'll be knocked down into the lava by those wave machines, and just for some vital information, not even a full armored X can protect you from knockdown by those machines. Oh, and don't even bother counting on after hit invincibility because the lava bypasses that. The irritation culminates with your match against Flame Hyonard. Bad design aside, he'll start off the match with 2 Hyonards charging right at you while a giant gazelle fires missiles from its side. Yep, another Maverick that can generate clones, and I hate that. In all honesty, when I played X7 during the time of its release, the moment I see the 2 Hyonards and the gazelle in the background, my instincts would immediately tell me that the real Hyonard is up at the gazelle's head, attacking me from above. Before I continue on with the match, I should mention that one defining characteristic from him, one that's capable of wrecking your eardrums.
Burn to the ground! 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 Burn to the ground!
Can you hear me?
Burn! Burn to the ground! Burn to the ground! Burn to the ground!
Oh, for goodness sake, he's so insufferable. Shut your freaking trap! Anyway, when you reach the top of the gazelle, there are 2 ways Hyonard will attack. When on its body, Hyonard and his clones will perform Triformation and will circle around in order to confuse you and lose track on which one is the real boss. Should you try to escape, the Hyonards will take no for an answer and trap you in that formation until you stun him with his weakness. So you better hope you have Zero's Suiretsuzan technique from Splash Warfly before attempting this match. When you're on the gazelle's shoulders, Hyonard will stay on its head and will summon missiles raining down on you, which, while risky, it can be your only hope of taking him down with long-range weapons without being trapped by the Triformation. And I say risky, it's because no matter what part of the gazelle you're standing at, the gazelle itself has no traction, so if it starts making turns around the arena, there's a chance you'll be thrown off without knowing until it's too late. Ice physics in a boss match within a fire-based arena? Why not? Even having to wall jump up the gazelle is just as wonky as the platforms are in Act 2. As for the weapons from him, straight up useless. Out of everything I said about Megaman X7, this one takes the cake. I've said this before in my review and I'll say it again. This Maverick can burn in the Netherrealm for all I care.
Ooh! That's gotta hurt!
And there you have it, folks. The top 20 worst Megaman X Mavericks. And I'm glad to say that I'm relieved to get that off my chest. But with a negative comes a positive. So up next on top of the game chain, we're going to be looking at the top 20 best Megaman X Mavericks. Oh, it'll definitely be a sweet time. Anyway, I would like to thank you viewers for taking the time to check out this video. And if you like this video, as well as all other videos in my channel, feel free to subscribe to my channel, as well as check out all other content on social media. Until then, this has been Musashi X, and I bid you all farewell, take care, and stay tuned.